USB DACs are a dime a dozen. There's plenty of them in the market, varying from the cheapest to the ridiculously expensive. There was a time when AudioQuest had the market cornered on MQA-compatible USB stick-type DACs. That has changed in the last few years, and for the better if you ask me. I have reviewed several portable USB DACs, including the EcoZerta, Heidi's S2, Monolith USB DAC, and of course the Dragonfly Cobalt and Red. Except for the AudioQuest products, I found the rest worth their price tags. A few months ago, HiFi asked if I would review a new USB DAC that they had acquired. HiFi, by the way, is an online retailer that sells chi-fi gear. I told them I'd be happy to review whatever they sent me. HiFi sent me the Audirect Atom 2. This is an $80 USB DAC. Is the Atom 2 a product worth seriously considering, or simply more white noise? The Atom looks and feels different from other portable USB DACs that I've reviewed. The Dragonfly series and the Monolith USB DAC all have the USB stick configuration. The Heidi's S2 and the EcoZerta are tethered to the computer using a short cable. The Atom, on the other hand, is a device designed to fit more snugly with your phone or computer's USB-C port. It is smaller than the Dragonfly and Monolith products. And because it is not tethered, it is also more pocket-friendly than the Zerta and S2. The Atom is built of metal. There's no plastic or flimsy construction here. It's solid and a little bit weighty. The Atom has only a singular 3.5mm audio port and connects via USB-C. Obviously, the USB-C connection allows this device to be smaller. There are two variations of the Atom 2, the USB-C version and the Lightning Jack version. I wish Apple would just adopt USB-C in their phones so we can stop with this stupid Lightning Jack complication. On the underside, there's a small LED which will glow to indicate audio resolution. Speaking of which, the Atom has the ES9281AC Pro DAC. Only a handful of products are currently using this DAC, and they're all from Chinese brands. According to the ESS product sheet, the 9281AC Pro seems to be a brand new DAC. It is 32-bit with a built-in amplifier. The 9281 supports all PCM resolutions, DSD up to 512, and is MQA compliant. The Atom 2 supports 32-bit PCM up to 768 kHz and DSD 512. Moreover, it is an MQA renderer. And for those who care, the Atom's frequency response is 20 Hz to 40 kHz, which means it should get that stupid high-res sticker. The Atom's power output is approximately 30 mW into 16 ohms, 64 mW into 32 ohms, and 7 mW into 600 ohms. We will talk about real-world headphone performance later. There is one oddity about the Atom 2 which was initially frustrating. When you plug the Atom into a device, your device will not recognize it immediately. Windows, Mac, and my LG V30 did not detect the Atom. I could not select it from the sound output menus in my computers. The Atom's LED lights cycled upon first plugging it in and then turned off. There's no firmware update or driver, so this was very perplexing. I contacted Hilidac, which is the parent company of the Audirect brand. Hilidac, to their great credit, responded within 8 hours and explained the situation. Apparently, the Atom 2 has a power switch. It's the 3.5mm jack. You see, the internal circuit gets triggered and the Atom is turned on only after you plug headphones into the Atom. I experimented with this and found that if you plug your headphones into the Atom and then plug the Atom into your device, it won't turn on. You actually have to plug the Atom into your device and then plug in your headphones. At first, this may seem to be a silly fault, but upon reflection, I think it is pretty genius. The fact is that the Atom is made for mobile devices with limited battery power. Keeping a DAC plugged into the USB port means that the DAC will continue to draw power from the battery, even if it is a slight drain. By using the 3.5mm jack as a power trigger, Hilidac mitigates even minor battery drain. Overall, the Atom 2 is built well. Unlike with the Zerta and S2, you don't have to worry about the cable breaking or fraying. And without doubt, the Atom is built more sturdily than the Monolith USB DAC and AudioQuest Dragonfly. The Monolith USB DAC is built of plastic, and the Dragonflies have a history of shoddy workmanship, particularly with their 3.5mm ports. For $80, Audirect offers a product with a rich feature set. This is my first foray with the ES9281AC Pro. I have never used a device with this DAC, and I was quite intrigued. I used the Atom 2 with various devices. This included the M1 MacBook Pro, iPhone 12 Pro Max XL, GX, whatever, the LG V30, and my Windows PCs. I used various headphones, but for purposes of identifying the sound signature of this device, I relied on the Allo Audio S4X. I listened to my test playlist on Amazon Music HD, as well as my personal FLAC library. I also compared the Atom to the Eco Zerta and the Dragonfly Red and Cobalt. Let's first talk about the Atom's sound signature. The Atom 2 seems to have a neutral sound signature. As I listened to my test playlist, I tried to determine if the Atom's DAC emphasized any particular region in the frequency range, but nothing stood out. The bass, mids, and treble appeared as they always do when the S4X is connected to other neutral sources. The Atom does not have warm or analytical sound, despite what you might read in some hifi forums. As a reference, we can think about the Chord Mojo and Monolith THX Portable. The Monolith has a noticeable analytical sound, while the Mojo has a warm signature that tends to veil subtle details. The Atom is like neither of these devices. Bass instruments are not overemphasized. Vocals and mid-centric instruments sound natural and uncolored, and the treble is clear yet not harsh. The Mojo, in contrast, tends to emphasize mid-bass, which then dovetails into the mids. Vocals on the Mojo are less separated from instruments. Treble appears to be a little bit rolled off. While obvious details might be audible on the Mojo, subtle ones are not. The THX Portable goes the other direction. Bass has a slight roll-off, vocals are a little clearer but also slightly more sibilant, and there is a slight increase in treble frequency. The Portable provides a bit more clarity and detail than the Atom. So, with these general descriptions in mind, I can easily conclude that the Atom 2 is neutral. You won't hear coloration from this device. I compared the Atom against the Zerta and the AudioQuest Dragonfly Red and Cobalt. I plugged each device into a separate source, then used a passive AV switch. I tried to volume match. When I compared the Zerta to the Atom, I sometimes thought that the Zerta had a bit more vocal clarity, but I could not be sure as this was inconsistent and dependent entirely on a particular track. Sometimes the difference was slightly audible, and other times there was no difference at all. I played around with the volume adjustment and could not get a perfect match. Timbre of instruments, placement of vocals, details, none of this was actually different between these two devices. That slight vocal clarity on the Zerta could be true, or it could be due to imperfect volume matching. Regardless, the difference is so slight that I simply cannot say that there is anything meaningfully separating the two devices. I next listened to the Dragonfly Red. There is a noticeable difference here, and it is consistent. The Red is a warmer sounding DAC. It emphasizes the bass, and there is less separation between sub-bass and mid-bass. The Atom has a bit more clarity in that region. Vocals appear to be marginally clearer on the Atom, with a bit more separation between vocalists and instruments. Treble seems to be a bit reduced on the Red. I played around with different volume adjustments, trying to keep fairly close to each other, and the results were similar no matter what volume I set. Finally, I compared the Atom to the Cobalt. Back and forth, one track after another, using various genres, trying different volumes, the results were consistent. The Cobalt and Atom sound very similar. I could not hear any actual difference in sound signature or clarity. There was no alteration in timbre, placement, or any other factor of performance. For all intents and purposes, were you to do a blind test, you would have a hard time telling which is which. Let's talk about the power output of the Atom 2. You may look at the claimed power output and shake your head. This, you might say, is totally insufficient for full-sized headphones. If this is what you think, then you are way off the mark. I tested the Atom with several headphones, including the Allo S4X, HD6XX from Sennheiser, the NDH20 from Neumann, the Beyerdynamic T1 2nd Gen, the Beyerdynamic DT1990, and the Audeze LCD1. The Atom got all of these headphones loud. The LCD1 and T1 need amplifiers, and ones that are a bit more powerful than the Atom. The LCD1 is a 16-ohm headphone and does play nice with any device, but I think its drivers get peak performance around 100 milliwatts. The Atom was able to easily drive the LCD-1, but I think that the LCD-1 might be a little clearer on devices which have a bit more power to provide, though I cannot say that the difference would be overly significant. The T1 is a 600 ohm headphone. I didn't have to go beyond 30% volume to get comfortable volume on the T1 with the Atom. But the Atom only has 7 milliwatts to provide at 600 ohms, so how is this possible? Well, the reason is that the mere fact that a headphone has high impedance does not mean it requires big watts of power. In fact, if you look at the T1's data sheet, you will notice that Beyerdynamic recommends no more than 300 milliwatts. Of course, the T1 is not at its best. It does not get peak performance from the Atom. While 7 milliwatts is enough to make the T1 work, you'll get more clarity, detail, and instrument separation with more power. It should go unemphasized, but I'll say it anyway. Don't bother using the Madhouse Argon on the Atom. As for planar magnetic headphones, well, other than the LCD-1, I also tried the Avantone Planar and the LCD-2 Classic. They worked on the Atom and got fairly loud, but once again, they need more power than what the Atom can provide. If you want planar magnetic drivers to work at their optimum, you generally need to give them 250 milliwatts. What can we say about all of these results? First, the Atom 2 is neutral. Second, it can easily drive most headphones. And third, the Atom is plug and play without worry about compatibility, other than with the Lightning port. Every once in a while, a troll comments that I'm wrong about DACs sounding similar. Some people believe that every DAC, no matter what it is, sounds different. Of course, if you frequent forums, you'll come across such notions. DACs have sound signatures. Those signatures are aggressive on each and every occasion. Some DACs, such as the Mojo and Dragonfly Red, are aggressively warm-sounding. Others, like the Monolith THX Desktop and Portable and the Earman TR Amp, are aggressively analytical. And still others, like the Tomping E30, SMSL Sanskrit, Songcause LA QXD1, Eco Zerda, Dragonfly Cobalt, Tomping EX5, and a multitude of others, are aggressively neutral. They all sound like what they all sound like. In other words, either a DAC is neutral, or it is warm, or it is analytical. It's hard to get in between signatures. There are, of course, variations within these three broad groups. For example, the Dragonfly Red is a bit less warm-sounding than the Mojo. The TR Amp is a bit more analytical than the THX Desktop or the Portable. The RME ADI2 DAC has clearer presentation than the EX5, the Zerda, and many other DACs, even though they're all neutral. But to say that all DACs have different sound signatures is false. It is somewhat comical that people who have little experience with DACs and even less experience doing actual A/B comparisons are the ones who promote such beliefs. The point is this: price is a bad indicator of good or bad sound. Price might indicate what features you get, but even that is not a hard and fast rule. The Atom 2 is a miniature portable USB DAC. It's as neutral as the Zerda and the Dragonfly Cobalt. Maybe you might hear a difference in some respects here and there, but never night and day. You simply cannot say that the Atom 2 sounds so dramatically different from the Cobalt or Zerda that you're listening to something totally different. To be honest, the Atom does everything competently, but it doesn't do anything amazingly. At this point, with so many good DACs in the market, I don't know what could possibly demand you throwing money down without thinking. Well, maybe if there was a DAC that had all the features and sound of the RME ADI2 DAC, but at half the price. But frankly, that's not realistic. This brings us to value. Yes, I think that the Atom 2 is value. For $80, it is sturdy. It's a small amp DAC that is plug and play. I actually think that the form factor makes sense. I'm sick and tired of the silly USB stick design that I have stopped using the Dragonflies and the Monolith products in my rotation. I hate the idea of having a thumb drive connected to my phone, creating more girth and more points of failure. The Atom supports all forms of audio, from the lowest form of PCM to the highest DSD, and it is an MQA renderer. Now, of course, I did not discuss the MQA features as I don't subscribe to Tidal. But one of my gripes about Tidal and MQA has been the startup cost. Not only do you pay a significant fee for title and MQA service, but you also must have an MQA-compatible DAC. It used to be not so long ago that MQA DACs were hundreds of dollars. Of course, you could buy the $100 Dragonfly Black, but that was the only option around for that price tag. So, now with devices like the Atom 2, your entry fee into MQA is lower than it used to be. This does not solve the other issues with MQA and title, but if you're devoted to their service, then you've got an affordable DAC to do the work. Ultimately, I look at the Atom as a good product with perfectly agreeable features. You can use most headphones with the Atom. You get to use all of your high-resolution audio. You get neutral sound signature. The device is small and sturdy. If you want something with a bit more physical reach or with an optical output, then take a look at the Zerta. But frankly, there's no reason to buy AudioQuest DACs. They're outdated, oversized, overpriced, and laughably underfeatured. For an affordable alternative, I think the Atom 2 is worth a close look.